Hello again everyone, my name is James Shotwell and this is the Music Biz channel. You know, recently somebody asked me if I thought it was a good idea to leave Spotify. Now their argument was fairly sound. They were upset about royalty rates, they felt like they weren't getting the growth they wanted to see, and they were just ready to throw the towel in and rely on services that paid better, such as Bandcamp or just direct sales to their audience. And while I understand that, I thought it would make a good topic for a video. So today, we're going to discuss it. Should you quit Spotify? Now, the question of whether or not we need Spotify has been around pretty much as long as Spotify. There are artists on both sides of the fence, with some believing that access for all is an absolutely crucial development point for how we share, discuss, and consume music. Others believe that the complete obliteration of paywalls, giving basically everyone access to every song for fractions of a cent when you really get down to it, is bad for everyone. That there's no way to grow, that people will never spend money on music again, that it's all downhill from here. And there are ways to understand how both parties feel, but the question remains, should you quit Spotify? And I think we have to start by thinking about the facts. Spotify is far and above the most popular streaming service on the planet with over 250 million monthly users. That is absolutely insane in the world of music streaming, and it is basically setting the pace for everything that follows. Whatever Spotify does, Apple Music, Deezer, Tidal, and so forth inevitably will do. And while those services are doing their best to break away from the Spotify mold, it's hard to give people something new when so many people already agree that the existing thing is great. People are going to keep using Spotify. In fact, in 2021, it was the fastest growing music streaming platform in the United States. And while it may be plateauing in parts of the world, as is music streaming as a whole, Spotify seems poised to continue growing for the foreseeable future. So before we even talk about whether or not you should leave, just know that its presence is not going to shrink anytime soon. If anything, it's going to become more inescapable, especially with the pipeline delays that we are currently experiencing. Physical media is really taking a hit right now. So more and more people are adopting streaming, and that trend is not slowing down. So before we get even into whether or not it's right for you to leave, just know that people are not going to follow you. Now, with that said, I want to talk about the gripes that most artists have. One of them being, perhaps the most important, is how little Spotify pays out per stream. And this is a problem that is obviously rampant throughout the streaming market. But again, because Spotify is leading everyone, they're the people that we look to for guidance, for leadership, to do the right thing. And so far, Spotify is standing its ground that it does pay artists enough. And if you ask most musicians, they would disagree. But I think that this all stems from a difference of opinion on what it is that Spotify's purpose is for. I think that there are artists who believe Spotify is meant to replace the money that they would make from physical media. And I think more specifically, artists who previously haven't sold a ton of records or haven't been selling a ton of records themselves for a while are starting to see that streaming doesn't replace the assumed amount of album sales that they think they should be getting. But Spotify is not in the business of converting listeners to paying customers. Spotify is in the business of entertaining listeners, and that's what they're doing. That's what the platform is for. It's meant to be your one-stop shop for music. But if you are truly a fan of somebody, then Spotify has a lot of limits on what it can offer you. Spotify is not the destination for the fans of an artist. It's just a place where you can go to listen to that artist's music. Converting people to fans, converting people into paying ticket holders at your shows, converting people into ambassadors who tell other people about your music. None of those things are what Spotify exists to do. Spotify exists to give people music, and they do it incredibly well. If you think Spotify should be doing those other things, that's kind of on you. And I want to get into more of why I feel that way. So this week I read an article on Hypebot that was written by Meg Marie, who basically suggested that if Spotify isn't going to pay artists at least 1.2 cents per song stream, that they should then slice up their songs into thirds. So instead of listening to one track to hear one song, you would listen to 3 tracks to hear one song. The idea being that the amount Spotify pays per each of those streams would add up to 1.2 cents, which is an amount that artists and songwriters have been arguing for Spotify to pay for a long time. And in theory, this is an interesting concept. Now, the idea here is that your diehard fans can play your music on Spotify. They won't care about those little blips, the little skips that happen as the tracks transition between one another. And any fans who discover your music on the platform and are annoyed by it, will at least know what your music sounds like and then can go off to Bandcamp or wherever to purchase your music and hear it in full. Basically, Spotify becomes more of an appetizer for your career rather than it is where your career lives. And I can understand why that idea makes sense. I mean, after all, we all would like to make more money. We would like to make more money without doing more work, aka writing more songs or getting more monthly listeners. And we all believe that artists should be paid more. At least I do. I believe that you do if you're watching this, and I think everyone in the industry would love to see artists compensated better, but historically, we've never been good at that. Now that I say all the things that I agree with that idea, let me tell you again why you're wrong. And this goes back to what I said earlier about the purpose of Spotify. Spotify is not the end goal of your career. I mean, if you're an independent artist who has never really been on the road, has only been around for a couple of years and has a handful of songs, if you're making any money at all without touring, without getting out there on the road, without, engaging your fans directly on a regular basis, if you're just passively making income from people listening to your music on Spotify, which you point them to through social media or whatever, you're already doing better than almost every independent artist before 2006 ever did without getting in a van and going on the road. It used to be absolutely impossible to make any kind of passive income with your music unless you were at the radio, which was out of reach for 99.9% of musicians. Unless you had licensing deals or something like that, someone else on your team helping you get passive income, it was impossible. But these days, everyone gets it. Everyone on every streaming platform and social media platform that pays for views or whatever happens to be, all those little microtransactions that happen, that is passive income coming in that even 15 years ago was out of reach for almost every single musician that ever existed. Now, is that income going to be enough to replace what would happen if you were selling 100 CDs every single week and going on the road regularly? Absolutely not. But again, I don't think Spotify was designed to do that. I don't think Spotify has ever claimed that its primary goal is to make it possible for anyone that makes music to make a full-time living strictly through streaming alone. It is supposed to add money to a musician's bottom line. Yes, does that additional money come at the cost of lost physical media sales? Perhaps. It's really hard to tell. There are a ton of artists that I listen to every single day on Spotify. And at the end of the year, when Wrapped comes in and I get my top 10, I love all those artists. But if you asked me right now if I wanted to buy a copy of their album on vinyl, I might not say yes. I don't love those artists the same way that I love other artists. That's not how fandom works. Every single artist you listen to isn't somebody that you're necessarily going to give money to. People like listening to the radio. It doesn't mean that they're going to see every artist on the radio in concert and buy a t-shirt and all of that. They just like listening to the music. Spotify is just giving us a chance to hear the music. If you want to become a fan, if you want to support the artist that you love, that's on you. That's your responsibility to go out and find ways to do that. And Spotify, to its credit, does have a few tools in its pocket. It allows you to link to social media pages. It allows you to have a web store. They had the tip jar for a while. They are trying to make it possible for fans to more easily connect with the artists that they discover on Spotify. But again, Spotify itself is not in the business of making you a full-time musician. Helping you get money in your pocket, yes. Giving you a full-time career without leaving your house, no. You know what else Spotify is good at? Discovery. Now, you might not think that you're winning a ton of fans on Spotify, but by just being on the platform and playing in the algorithm ballgame, you are able to be recommended to countless people who may otherwise never discover your music. And by leaving Spotify, you're just removing any chance of that discovery happening. By staying on it, I don't really see a lot of problems. Like the argument for leaving, I get on some level. It's a protest, it's an FU to the man, it's taking a stance for what you assume to be the value of your music. It's saying, I won't bend to what this company says I am worth. And I can absolutely respect that in every single way. But what about all the opportunities that you're leaving on the table? Because there's not a week that goes by that I don't see tweets or Instagram posts or Facebook posts or read something somewhere where a person discovered their new favorite artist on Spotify. The weekly recommendation algorithm is immaculate. New Music Friday, great. There are a ton of playlists on there. People may not become lifelong fans of your music, but every single week, every single day on Spotify, there are people who are being exposed to your music simply because you're on that platform. And why would you ever remove yourself from that? Why would you ever take yourself out of the problem? Sure, 9 times out of 10, somebody's gonna hear your song once or twice, move on and never think about it again. But Every now and then, somebody's going to hear your music on that platform that would otherwise may have never ever encountered you. And you could radically change their life. And not only that, you could change their life to such an extent that they are then converted into a fan who goes and sees you in concert and buys your merch and buys all that. Maybe they even become an ambassador for your band. They start telling other people about the band that changed their life, all because they found you on Spotify. In a world where you're not on Spotify, you're just on Bandcamp and your personal website, and then you're pitching blogs and everything. I can appreciate the desire to build up a community that can support you there. But if you're starting from scratch right now, if you're an artist that doesn't have 100 fans that can give them $10 right now, I don't know that that's a smart move. I don't see the long-term benefits. I see the short-term benefits. There's some headlines to be grabbed out of quitting Spotify. There's some op-eds to be written that will no doubt get picked up by different places. There are some ways to grab some short-term press. But if you want to build a career in this industry, it's not about cutting out all the things that are imperfect. It's about learning to play the game. The industry is flawed countless ways. There are so many problems with the music industry, and I like to think that we are on the path to improving it. But by just quitting and saying, we're not going to do this anymore, it's stopping something that I feel is inevitable, which is access to entertainment for all. It's trying to turn back the hands of time, and that can't be done. The genie is out of the bottle. People have access to music. They want access to music. If they really love something, if you make something that connects with people on a deeply personal level, they will seek out more. They will seek out ways to support you. They will seek you out in concert. Just because you have a bunch of listeners on Spotify doesn't mean that you should be making a bunch of money. It just means that you make songs that people enjoy. Your job as a person who's captured their attention enough to get them to keep listening is to then work on strengthening that bond through social media, through additional songwriting, through experiential opportunities, through anything you can imagine. It's about adding more and more ways that people can connect with you and get close to you and discover you, not removing them because you feel that they're not as fair as they should be. Of course they're not fair. It's not designed to do the thing that you think it's supposed to do. It's just supposed to allow people to find you, and it's doing that. So don't walk away. Now, I am sure that there are people who are going to watch this rant and tell me that I'm wrong. They're going to tell me that, well, what about artists who were successful in the 80s and 90s who have sold millions of records and are now barely scraping by because of Spotify? My question to you, whenever I see a story like that, whenever I see somebody from 25 years ago talking about how little they make now, the question is, what else are they doing in their career to generate revenue and generate attention for their music? Are they upset because an album that they put out 25 years ago that hasn't had a strong marketing campaign and hasn't really been relevant culturally for 2 decades isn't doing well on a streaming platform that is constantly inundated with tens of thousands of new songs every single day, each one with their own marketing push by either an individual person or a massive team? That's not Spotify's fault. That's that artist and their team's fault for allowing whatever they've put out in the past to not continue to have the cultural relevancy that they feel it deserves. That's something that they need to work on. That is not Spotify's problem. I think that if you're struggling right now with how much money you're making from streaming, the question you should be asking is not, how do I stick it to the man? It should be, what could I do in other areas of my career to strengthen my bond with whatever amount of listeners I do have, to hopefully convert them from a passive listener to an actively engaged fan to a diehard fan who tells other people about my music. Spotify is making the introduction. It's on you to build the relationship. Now, I have a ton of content coming up in the weeks ahead, and they won't all be editorial like this, but I've been hearing so much talk about Spotify that I felt like we had to say it. My opinion, you should be everywhere that you can be that isn't too time-consuming. If it starts demanding more of your life than you're willing to give it, absolutely break free. But if all you have to do is put your music somewhere and fractions of a cent or dollars or tens of dollars or hundreds of dollars pour in every single month, whether or not you take any real action on your part, I would just let that money train keep on rolling. If anything, try to stoke it any way you can and do what you can to move the debate around streaming royalties forward. Sign petitions, get involved politically, but don't just walk away. That doesn't do you good, and it certainly doesn't help your fellow musicians in the fight to have more access and more pay and better lives for everyone. But if you want advice on the industry or how you can succeed or just what's going on in it, click the subscribe button down below, because that's what we do here at Music Biz. I'm your host, James Shotwell. I'm here as often as I can be. We're going to talk about everything in 2022, from Web3 to the metaverse, Instagram, Spotify, Facebook, Deezer, whatever it is you want to discuss, we'll be doing it right here. So until I see you next time, please take care of yourself because you deserve it.